Thank you and good evening. I'm thrilled to be here in Stara Zagora. I'm sorry I don't speak Bulgarian. I'm very sorry. So I hope if I speak slow enough in English that you will laugh at my jokes. Well, tonight I'm going to be playing lots of tunes from my album, and they're going to be all kind of in the style of that, because my hero was Tommy Dorsey, the trombone player, and that was obviously in the wee small hours of the morning, which was Frank Sinatra's title track from his album in 1955. So often on my travels around the world, I find that musicians quite often can be almost in competition with each other, and people are trying to play high and loud and fast, and it's all a bit of a competition. So I'm not about that. I'm about the music and about playing from there. So that's what I'm going to try and do this evening, and just play some very, very beautiful melodies that mean a lot to me. So I'm going to try and make everything mean something, and hopefully you will enjoy what we've got for you this evening. I'm going to carry on now with a tune called My One and Only Love. I have to say, I am delighted to be performing with these wonderful musicians up here. Please give them a hand. Well, this next tune has actually done quite a lot for me and my career. I was filmed playing this next tune, and it was uploaded onto YouTube to help promote a brass festival that I was playing in the Netherlands. And the video has had tens and hundreds of thousands of views, so actually that's ended up giving me work, which is fantastic. So this piece means a lot to me, and you might recognize the melody. I'm going to play you the melody now, if I can get my phone to work. It's a melody that you should recognize, hopefully. It's coming, it's coming. So I do hope you all recognize that very, very famous piano concerto by Rachmaninoff. Well, this is where, that's the piece that they stole the melody from, and it was first recorded in this version by Frank Sinatra. So I hope you enjoy this. This is called I Think of You. Well, in my career, a very varied career of music, I actually get asked to write and arrange a lot of music. And surprisingly, playing the trombone, I end up getting asked to write for strings, quite strangely. I think it's been mentioned already that I toured with Sting and toured with Seal, and only artists starting with the letter S, strangely. But when I toured with Sting and also 6 years touring with Seal, I ended up writing all the string parts for them. And Seal approached me one day on tour and said, so I'm doing this concert with this orchestra. I went, okay. The San Francisco Symphony Orchestra. Oh, okay. And he needed all of his music expanding out for a whole orchestra. So his famous songs, Kiss from a Rose and Crazy, all these big, big pop songs, I had to write full woodwind and strings and everything. So a real pleasure, but even more of a pleasure when you actually hear it played by the string players, because they bring so much to life from the notes on the page. This next number actually shows off the strings, so that's why I want a little link there into talking about the strings. This next piece is just for the 5 string players and trombone. This is Astor Piazzolla's Oblivion. Milena, Konstantin, Yulia, Georgi, and Vasil. Well, just to give my lip a little bit of rest, I'm going to do a little bit of talking now and tell you a little bit more about me. So I grew up near London, and I took up the trombone aged 11 because it had the slidey arm comedy thing. And in my local music service, I started playing with orchestras, big bands, pop stuff, improvising, everything right from the start. And I felt very, very lucky. And I moved to Manchester in the UK to study a music degree. And believe it or not, you can get a music degree on a bit of moving tube. And then soon after studying, I already had a full-time freelance career in the UK when I graduated, and I started doing pop tours all around the world. I feel very lucky again to be doing that kind of thing. But in the middle of having fun touring the world, in 2004 I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, and so I then went through lots and lots of treatment. Excuse me. I lost my hair 3 times through all the treatments, radiotherapy, chemotherapy, transplants, everything. And it got to 2007, and they then told me that I had to get my head around the fact that I wasn't going to survive. They tried everything, and I was told that I was going to die, and they had nothing left for me to try. They told me that chemotherapy, all the standard treatments, would not work. So I had to rely on experimental drugs to be invented. And I either choose to die or I choose to give these drugs a go. So I thought, well, I'll help in medical research, if anything. And I went for all these experimental drugs. I tried 3 different experimental drugs. One of them has some very strange side effects. I was locked in a lead-lined room for 9 days because I was highly radioactive. They injected me with some very, very radioactive things. And again, though all these things didn't work, but the 3rd experimental drug in 2011, so this is from 2004 to 2011, I'm still touring the world and being flown home for treatments and transfusions and all sorts of things. And this 3rd drug got me to remission and completely shocked all the specialists who had told me I was going to die. And they then gave me 1 month to decide whether to go for a bone marrow transplant from an unrelated donor, which would hopefully secure that remission for the rest of my life. But they said if I don't go for the bone marrow transplant, then they don't know these experimental drugs, whether they're going to make you stay in remission for the rest of your life. They guessed I would live about 3 years if I didn't go for the transplant. The transplant itself had a 30% survival rate, so I had this huge choice. If I go for the transplant and it doesn't work, then I could die within the first few weeks or the first few months. But I chose to give it a go, and they found 2 matches for me out of 11 million people. One was pregnant, so they couldn't ask her, and thankfully a German man said yes, and his cells matched completely, and so his cells were transferred over to Manchester. I received his cells. I now have his DNA, and my blood type has now swapped over to his blood type, and I've been in remission ever since. And I actually flew out to Berlin just 2 years ago to go and thank that man in person for saving my life. So that's my health journey. And there is a link into this next tune because the pharmaceutical company who invented that 3rd drug that got me to remission was so brand new, but it's now the first drug to be FDA approved for Hodgkin's lymphoma in over 40 years, which just makes me think I've just been at the right time in the right place to receive that drug. and that pharmaceutical company have actually flown me all around the world to speak to oncologists all over the world, Brazil, Singapore, and all their oncologists from all over their countries come to listen to me talking about the drug and my experiences. So I feel really, really privileged to be able to help future patients, future oncologists through what I've been through. And all of these travels, I've always tried to take this along with me and tie in some music. And I flew out to the headquarters of the pharmaceutical company in Boston in the US. And I managed to tie in a masterclass at the famous Berklee School of Music. And there I played this kind of music again, and I got the pleasure of doing a duet with another trombone hero of mine, Phil Wilson, who actually toured with Tommy Dorsey. And this next tune is the tune that I played with him, so I'm going to dedicate this to him. This is Polka Dots and Moonbeams. Teodor on piano. Teodor on piano, Vasil on bass, and Stefan on drums. I'm not sure if I've mentioned that I've got a CD. Anyway, this next tune is on my CD, and it's one that I wrote all the strings for again. And I want to ask, how many of you here are actually musicians yourselves? Hands up, who's a musician? Oh, there's a few. Not many, but there's a few. Well, if you live with those musicians, then you'll know that musicians keep very strange hours, and we're night owls. And so when I start doing my arranging work, I always start late in the evening. And while I was doing this arrangement, it got to about midnight, and I accidentally went into a lovely key change, and I loved it so much, and I knew that brought to life on string instruments it would sound wonderful, so I just had to stay up all night then and finish the arrangement. So I finished this about 4 o'clock in the morning, but I'm very pleased with it, and I hope you like it. It's called But Beautiful. Well, the trombone is probably quite a strange instrument for a female to play. Have we got any trombone players here? None. None. Absolutely none. Well, I do hope that I've managed to show you a different side of the trombone tonight, because we're normally stuck at the very back and these guys are at the front. So it's time to swap. The trombone is one of the most versatile instruments there are out there. You don't get violins in brass bands, but you do get trombones in orchestras. So we get to play in all sorts of different genres and different styles. In the UK, the trombone is actually classed as an endangered species because people aren't picking up the trombone and learning it. So I've actually been involved with a company that are making plastic trombones called a P-bone. And they're in every single colour, yellow, green, blue, purple, pink, every colour, so that children hopefully can say, I want to play that because it's green. So hopefully it's starting to introduce the trombone to another generation. And the pink version of the trombone actually helps raise funds for cancer charities as well. So I've been a very close part of developing all of that. But yeah, I took up the trombone because there was one left in the cupboard at school and no one chose it, so I chose it. And I liked the fact that you can go, and I was the comedian in the school playground, so that's why I chose it. And I just stuck to it ever since. And it's this kind of music that you hear the soft, lyrical side of the trombone in the upper register, which is quite sore on your lip when you're playing it for a whole hour. But I do hope you've enjoyed the lyrical side of the trombone, and maybe even one of you may buy a plastic trombone. You never know. This next tune was given to me by a trombonist based in Los Angeles. There aren't many trombone players in the world, but we all know each other, and it's a very nice, close-knit family. And this trombone player in Los Angeles I know very well. He records on all the Family Guy and Simpsons, all the theme tunes and all the cartoons he plays trombone on. And he very kindly gave me this. He recorded this on his own album, which is very similar to mine, just trombone with strings. So I'm very thankful to Alan Kaplan. This is Nancy. did I mention that I've got a CD? Yes, okay. I just happen to have a few with me this evening. And this next one is on it. And I recorded the CD a few years back while I was still ill, actually. And one of my friends approached me and said, how about let's record an album for charity for one of my chosen cancer charities. So that's what my CD does. It raised funds for a cancer charity that helped my mother, actually, while she was helping me. She was struggling in the background, looking after her daughter, and so she sought help from this cancer charity. So it was my way of thanking them for thanking my mother, for helping me. So good reason to buy a CD, and it is only 201 days until Christmas. So this next tune is called What Are You Doing New Year's Eve? And it was in the recording process of recording the CD, we got to the mixing stage and making sure everything is at the right volume. And we suddenly noticed that my wonderful piano player had managed to quote and hide the entire song of Auld Lang Syne in amongst this tune, What Are You Doing New Year's Eve? Which was so clever. So you'll have to buy a CD so you can hear that bit. Anyway, this is What Are You Doing New Year's Eve? Well, I've come to my last number, and I'm afraid it's another slow one. But you've got to stick around for the next bit because I heard them in the sound check and it's fantastic. You can have a great time. Before I play my final tune, I'd like to first thank these fine musicians up here. Milena, Konstantin, Yulia, Georgi, Theodor, Vasil and Stefan. I'd also like to thank you all for coming. It means a lot to be able to play the trombone to no trombone players. Normally I'm playing to lots of trombone players, so it's a nice change for me. And thank you so much for having me in Stara Zagora. What a beautiful place. I've fallen in love, and I already told Stefan earlier that I want to come back and go travelling a little bit and see your lovely country. I think it's wonderful, and the smell is just divine. So thank you for having me. I do have some CDs, and I will be with them in case you happen to want a Christmas present very early. I have a different CD with me as well, which is my funk and soul and Motown group, which is 5 trombones playing the likes of Chaka Khan and Aretha Franklin. So do check out that CD as well. It's very cheap. Thank you so much. I'm going to leave you with this last one called I'll Be Seeing You.
Теодор Петков, Стефан Кожухаров, Васил Хаджи Грудев, Георги Богданов от Софийска филхармония, Юлия Кирова, Константин Косев, божествената Милена Димова, с която до сега само бяхме записвали, Карол Джарвис, дами и господа. Карол Джарвис. Наистина едно от най-красивите неща, които съм виждал, чувал. Thank you, Carol.